Welcome to another episode of the Learning Journey podcast. Wayne Heinzen is my name, your host once again, as today we head to the Netherlands. Well, sort of Africa, but really the Netherlands. That'll make a whole bunch of sense when I introduce our guest. Bastiaan De Waal is his name, and welcome, Bastiaan, to the Learning Journey.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Now, I'm very appreciative because we're actually chatting and it's a public holiday in the Netherlands where you are at the moment. So thank you from the beginning for taking some of your day off to spend with us to talk about learning on the podcast. Really appreciate that. But for those maybe that don't know, can you let us know your current role in MAF? I know you've been with the organisation for quite some time, but what's your current role?
So I'm the Africa director. The regional director for the Africa region, I should say. That's it. Yeah. So we have 8 countries in Africa region, and there I'm the regional director.
Yeah. So what does that actually mean? Because some people, they might be in a program listening somewhere and they go, regional director. What does that actually mean? What does your role entail?
Yeah, so I work a lot with the country directors from those programs, and then we are aligning our strategies if we are moving into the same directions with our ministry plans and with projects and project proposals and the type of flying we do, and I try to support them.
Now, you said obviously you're working across 8 programs in 8 different countries. What are some of the challenges when it comes to that role?
Oh, I think then we will stretch the podcast to a few hours. So let's keep it brief. Yeah. So what are the challenges? So it's of course the nature of our work that we work in countries who are in development. So government rules and regulations are also in development, and government officers and people are also developing. So sometimes you work with people who haven't traveled abroad. Well, they work in an international aviation branch, right? So local government authorities, and so it's difficult for them to oversee. Okay, this is the standard worldwide. That's where we're working towards, and they don't have that whole big picture because of the limited resources they have. Those things that brings challenges in our programs. All the different rules and regulations which are not lined up. So in this country they ask this from us, and in the other country they ask this. It's sometimes difficult to explain that we are a mission organization where we are flying very expensive aircrafts, and it's a very high standard industry, and government officials find it difficult to see, okay, are you now a business or are you now a mission organization?
Now, you've come into this role after, I think, a decade or so in South Sudan as the country director there. How have you had to upskill yourself, I guess, from country director to a regional director? Like, what sort of learning and skills and training have you had to acquire for this new role? I think you're about 18 months into it, so maybe still learning and acquiring.
Indeed, I'm still learning. It's a steep learning curve. So before South Sudan, I became accountable manager, program manager in Madagascar, and that's a reasonable small program. I with at the moment 2 smaller aircrafts, 182 and 1 Caravan, and that has a full AOC and a full AMO. So there I learned the skill set of the aviation industry. I became an accountable manager there, and had time to walk downstairs and work and see in the workshop how things are done in the aviation industry. The same with the flight planning. So that was my first good introduction into the aviation industry, actually. 3 years in Madagascar. And then I moved indeed to South Sudan. There is no education or there's no university to become a regional director of a mission organization in Africa, because it's such a wide scope of responsibilities and tasks. Right? It's a big part is HR, and a big part is aviation, and a big part is just legal. That's why we do it as a teamwork, I think. I could not do it alone.
Yeah. I want to talk about where you're at in a moment, but I actually want to go back 15 years because you touched on it, that you had come from a non-aviation background into an aviation ministry in Madagascar. So I wonder, because our organisation is growing in terms of, people coming into the organisation, and some of those, like myself and like you, when you began with MAF, aren't from an aviation background. So do you remember sort of back in those early days, any tips that you received or anything you learnt the hard way in terms of like some lessons, some wisdom maybe you can share with someone who's new to the organization, but not from that aviation background?
I think you need to have a sort of an affiliation with the aviation industry, or you need to have a passion for it. And I always had it, but yeah, I don't have a pilot license. But yeah, when I was flying with an aircraft or so, then I was always quite amazed. I think, whoa, how is it ever possible? These these machines go into the air within a minute, and just the whole high standards in the aviation industry. I thought it was always interesting. But yes, it never occurred to me that I could work in the aviation industry. But I think if you're open for it and you just set your priorities, I think people can learn and pick up skills. And I had a very good team in Madagascar at that time, from an operations manager, from a chief engineer, who gave me the opportunity to learn and to explain the background behind the aviation and the background of the systems. Because in the beginning, I was shocked when they sent, I think, an email with the link to 12 manuals or so. I thought, how can I ever be on top of this? It's close to impossible. But you learn it step by step. And I started just Googling in the beginning, okay, how is this turbine engine of a caravan really working? So yeah, I think if you have passion and you're eager to learn, I think everyone can pick it up, whatever background you have.
Hey, Bastiaan, I love what you said in terms of being open to it, because I think if your approach is that I do want to grow, do want to develop personally and professionally, and you remain open to learning, then actually everything around you becomes a lesson almost.
Absolutely. And it's just such a unique organization because you have a very high standard in aviation. And at the same time, we are working missions to people in remote areas all over the world. So I think that combination, that was for me the real trigger, that I thought, okay, our objective and our strategy is to reach the people in remote areas. So I thought that's a perfect combination. And then being an interdenominational organization, that people from all sorts of backgrounds, from all sorts of churches worldwide were connecting in this organization, I thought, okay, this is ideal for me.
Yeah. Now, this might be a hard question for you to answer, and I do apologize in advance. But if I was to say, Bastiaan, give me 3 top skills across 15 years with the organization that you have learned that you think could probably, wherever someone is working, whether it's in program, whether it's in a support office, whether it's remote, whatever it might be, 3 skills from your experience that translate no matter the occupation or location. Is that a question you could answer?
Yeah, I think so. I think the most important one is, I think you will call in English, emotional resourcefulness. It's just what I just said. We work with all people from different backgrounds and different corners of the world. And there is a lot of email conversation or online conversations. And you miss a lot of in those conversations when you sit next to each other in a room. Sometimes people with the background, people come from Canada or from the Netherlands, where I've come from, or New Zealand, or where we look like each other, but we do have different backgrounds and we do have different approaches, right? And then also, of course, in countries. I mean, you need to, I think, really be a people person, listen to people and love people. And I have learned over my years to be patient. Everyone thinks that they are a bit patient, but when you really get challenged, and you sometimes, when I was country director, you need to sit 2.5 hours in an office because a government official doesn't want to talk with you, but it's just a power play, because it's deliberately that they put you 2.5 hours down into a seat. You learn patience. So I think the first one is, I think, emotional resourcefulness. I think if you can understand the feeling of someone else, although we are one organization and we in every country we do the same, we fly aircraft and we go to remote areas. Every country is completely different. We have sometimes French-speaking countries with a Muslim majority, and we have English-speaking countries where the Christians are the majority in that country. Yeah, we have very developed local civil aviation authorities, and we have civil aviation authorities who are just in the first years of setting themselves up. And we have big programs, right, with 6 or 7 aircraft, and we have programs with one or two aircraft. It's helpful if you can listen to people. So maybe listening is the other one.
Yeah.
If you don't really hear what people say, how can you resource them or how can you equip them to do their job well? People judge very quickly. I mean, was my nature as well. You very often went, so I think, okay, he is just asking for something that's nice to have, but it's not that high priority. But you're often not listening then, because if you really listen to the person and think, oh, all right, okay. And then I visited the country and then I saw, oh, whoa, now I understand why they are asking for this or that. So I think you need to listen very well. And then I think because we are in aviation industry, yeah, you need to have quality high. If you have a breakdown in the air, you start sweating. But also if you have a breakdown somewhere in the remote area where you need to overnight.
Now, we touched earlier that we're dealing with a lot of people from different countries, and so they bring, their different culture into the organization. And one of the things that I've heard about some European countries is that they can be fairly direct in their communication. Like they don't, as we would say in Australia, they don't beat around the bush. They sort of say, yeah, this is what needs to be said, and they said it. So I'm wondering if you've had some experience in terms of just having one of those conversations that sometimes we try and avoid because it's a difficult conversation, but it's one that needs to be had. And I wonder if you've learnt something out of, those conversations that I'm sure you've had either in your current role or as a country director.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I've learned very much. Having that background, we are very direct. And I really learned my lesson, especially when you're country director, because so in the Netherlands, if you chair a meeting and you can say your opinion about something. You say, okay, this is, we are discussing today this. I think we go right. And some people think, let's go left in making the decision. But because you set the tone already, people zip their lip. They think, okay, the country director thinks, let's go right. So I don't say anything anymore. Well, in the Netherlands, people will go straight into you. Say, no. I know you're the country director and you want to go right, but left is much better because this. Right? So I learned my lesson. If you need to chair a meeting, you first need to zip your lip before I say my opinion. We are all over the world and in different areas. And if you send an email, for example, some people who come from a more indirect background, like you said, we are beating around the bush sometimes. They also can sometimes then read in between the lines in my email that I think, but that's not what I'm saying. So don't try to pick that up, because if I will say that, I will learn it as well. But I have started appreciating it very much as well, the beating around the bush. And I mean, that sounds sometimes negative, but if I hear how people how they start a crucial conversation, maybe I should say it like that, then I'm really jealous about them, because they can do that so politely and they can bring it with soft skills and they still get the message across, but it lands much better than someone coming from a direct culture and put it on the table there and then people dig in their heels. You may think that people from the UK or maybe from Australia or other cultures beat around the bush, but in an Africa culture, no, you will never ever say something directly to your line manager.
So how do you manage people like that? Because there are people that are listening to the podcast that are in programs where that's exactly their reality. So, how, from your experience and maybe from the country directors you talk to, in your role right now, how do you manage a program like that where people aren't really saying the things that either they want to say or often that need to be said?
Yeah, I think the skill set patience comes in there, and I just coach the country directors, because you have new country directors or people, and that says, yeah, I hear what you say, but you just need to sit down with them. I have the patience, go there and listen. If you want to talk with a government official, and you knock on his door and you put the letter on his desk and you ask him to sign the letter or to sign something, you will never build up a good relationship. But you will first ask to his family and ask all other things. So one of my tricks, what I did when I was in South Sudan, the country director, I became Facebook friends with all the government officials. And then you saw them posting something from a grandchild or that they have built a new house or something. And then on Monday morning, you popped into the office and you say, hey, I saw on Facebook that your granddaughter had her third birthday. Wham, and you immediately have a connection. And then you talk half an hour about his granddaughter and his family, and then he says, "Oh, you needed a signature," and he just gives a signature. He even doesn't read the letter. So it's all about relationships and trust.
Yet some people would see that and go, oh, I'm wasting half an hour talking to the government official about, his granddaughter. Just get the piece of paper signed because I've got a mountain of work, that I need to do. Like that's how some people would actually see that situation, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, doing business in the business world is already built around trust. If you do business and you sell something to another company, there is a trust relationship often there. In most of the Africa countries, I think all of them, trust is the only thing, and you're not wasting half an hour. You are investing into the future, and that is so important for them. I once had a government official who was all the NGOs and humanitarian organizations were under his authority in the country, and there were all country directors. There was in South Sudan, and a lot of NGOs are working there. So I think we had close to 100 country directors in one room, with the government official who made the decision if you are allowed to operate in that country or not. And he clearly said, you can do the best work in the world, you can save people, you can build hospitals and bore water wells, but if I don't know you, we don't care about what you're doing. So that was quite direct, actually, for an African. So he just mentioned that relationship is the basis, and then you start working into the country.
Hey, Bastiaan, you mentioned a word that I want to touch on because we're very keen on it in learning and development, and that was that word coaching.
Yeah.
Talk to us about what that means to you, and more than that, the results that you've seen when you've come alongside somebody and actually coached them through or in their position.
Yeah, thank you. I love the word coaching, and I'm not so fond of training, to be honest. Because sometimes telling someone how to do it is often easy. And that's what you sometimes see. And that's quite an attempt to make, especially in online training, it's easily to say, this is how you should do it. And this works the best way. But sometimes people know how to do it, but how to implement it, that's the big question. And I think that's the difference between training and coaching. I think if you coach someone, you walk alongside with that person. It's the translation from what you have learned in theory, in the training, but implementing it in the field. You can do coaching, I think, from a distance, but you need to keep following it up. So it's walking alongside with the person to explain, okay, this is the approach you should have. If you have an HR issue with a staff member, you can forward the policy, grievance policy, or whatever policy we have. But that's not really helping. That's often not the support they want, because they can read the policy themselves. But they just want a meeting after they have had a meeting, before they have the next meeting. Okay, I've done step 1. These were the reactions. These were the options. How do we now move to step 2? And I think as managers or as leaders, I think if you take people who you line manage, the people who report to you, if you take them alongside that process, then you're really coaching someone. Because also the coach sometimes learns it, because you might have the theory, but all right, I didn't know that this was in your culture or in this country. We didn't know that when we were writing the training syllabus.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and so very, very important for, many organizations, but particularly, what we do at MAF in terms of, I think it's statistically, it's about 70% of what's learnt is actually learnt on the job. So, it's not learned in books. It's not learnt, via Elevate or online or anything like that. It's actually that principle of coaching. You've really touched on it very, very well there, Bastiaan. So thanks for sharing your insight into that. Hey, sadly, our time is drawing to a close. And I thought just as we finish, I wanted to give you an opportunity to see if there was anything that you wanted to share when it comes to people's individual learning, or someone who's in a management or leadership position in terms of sewing in and investing in those that they're leading. Is there sort of a final thought that you'd love to share?
Yeah, I think if you really have the compassion about people and you really care about people, you can go in the extra mile in supporting them. I'm not saying that everyone needs to be an extrovert and hugging everyone. So compassion, I think it's a feeling in your stomach, right? When you walk there, you still have that feeling in your stomach. So you see the goal, the mission and the vision where we want to go. Then you understand that we need to put policies and procedures in place. So I would always say you first need to really see the end goal. Okay, this is why I've signed up with MAF. Not because of the nice and shiny aircrafts. If you see the end beneficiaries, if you see that goal, then I think you can learn a lot.
Well, Bastiaan, thank you so much for joining us on the learning journey. I'm sure that there's a lot more that we could have tapped into, but sadly our time is done for today. But we do really appreciate you taking your public holiday to spend 20 or so minutes with us here on the podcast.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. And I love to listen to this podcast. I was happy to contribute.
Bastiaan De Waal, Regional Director for Africa, was our guest on the podcast today. And as we heard, Bastiaan's been with MAF for many years in a variety of roles. And I really hope that you learn something from his journey that will actually help you to grow and develop in your role at MAF. Now, this podcast, The Learning Journey, it's just one tool that we use in L&D to help create a learning environment. What we want to do is be able to equip all staff to be engaged, to be motivated and productive, all while using their God-given talents every day. So if there's something we can do to assist you or your team, please let us know. You can email learning.development@mafint.org. Now, next episode, we talk with Andy Hedley-Smith, a man whose journey has seen him protect prime ministers and presidents, among other things. Join us then for more of The Learning Journey.